We've always built this with three tenets in mind. How can we be fast growing from a revenue standpoint? But how can we also make sure that we have tremendous profitability along the way and a huge amount of visibility into the future? And those three combined makes us a very unique company in today's market.
All right. What's up, everyone? We have another great episode today. We have Jason Krantz, the CEO and founder of Definitive Healthcare. Now, if you've been in the B2B world, you know that data companies are enormously valuable and frankly are what many businesses use to actually run their business. Definitive Healthcare has been the leading business for data in the healthcare space used by companies that are working with healthcare professionals and practitioners. And the story of this business is nothing short of amazing. Dave shares a lot of the lessons in what it's taken to scale to go from 0 to 200 million in revenue in 10 years, what more recent rapid scale looks like, and frankly, what it takes to build a data business. Data businesses are insanely valuable, but there's a lot of nuance. And I think for anybody that's interested in learning about the particulars of building that type of business, this is a perfect episode for you.
Yeah, and I think what was really refreshing about Jason is that when he talks about his revenue goals, like getting to $1 billion, it's not $1 billion valuation, it's $1 billion in revenue, which is just a breath of fresh air. And I think something that a lot of people can stand to benefit from learning from in today's market. And I also love the fact that, he shares how his past experience building another company before this really taught him how to balance the budget and run a profitable company from day one. And we dive into what that meant for his journey building Definitive.
I completely agree. Jason's perspective on, building a solid business economically is probably not what you hear as much these days in startup world. And so a lot of great lessons and insights there. Well, let's dig in and hear from Jason. Hey, Jason, how's it going?
Going great. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you on the show. We've been actually coincidentally having a lot of different healthcare leaders on this show. And, I really actually think heard of Definitive Healthcare when I was looking over a list of some of the fastest growing companies in the US right now. So kudos to you for building and scaling a great business. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But maybe just to set the stage for the folks that are listening that aren't necessarily familiar with Definitive Healthcare, tell us about your business.
Sure. So if you think about Definitive Healthcare, kind of at a high level, what we help clients do is we provide healthcare commercial intelligence to help them commercialize and sell more effectively into the healthcare vertical. So if you think about healthcare overall, it's a $4 trillion market. So one out of every $5 spent in the US is healthcare, which is truly remarkable. But what makes it super interesting for a company like Definitive Healthcare is the complexity of this industry. So anyone that's dealt with a healthcare system understands that you've got physicians, you have hospitals that they work at and clinics, you have health insurance companies that you got to deal with to get paid. There's governments trying to regulate all of this. And all these different groups want something different out of healthcare. And that makes it very complex if you're a company that is trying to sell into or navigate within healthcare. So we help our clients make sense out of that. So the way I like to think about it is without Definitive Healthcare, you're in a museum and you see these old maps where there's pictures of mountains and rivers, but you never really know where you are. As a result, it takes Lewis and Clark months and months to get to their destination. We're like a modern day GPS system. We're like Waze or Google Maps, where we lay out the entire healthcare universe in front of you. We tell you how to get where you're going, how long it's going to take, and when an obstacle comes up, when there's a change, we help you navigate around that so that you can make sure you're successful selling into the healthcare market.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I mean, one of the analogous companies that a lot of our audience is high growth B2B companies selling to B2B companies, not healthcare. And a lot of us have used a company called ZoomInfo over the years to understand who are the people that we need to call on? What are the people that are in the titles that we need at the companies? What is their contact information? What does an org chart look like? And I would be completely lost without that, and without LinkedIn, and that just transparency is huge. Is the current business and product what the original vision for the company is? Maybe we could kind of get into background story a little bit.
Yeah, so it is similar, as all good businesses should, definitely evolve over time. But the original thesis was we're helping people deal with the vast changes that were taking place in healthcare. So back when I started in 2011, there was really three things that were happening in healthcare. There was this explosion of data. So people were implementing electronic health record systems for the first time. That was generating a whole slew of new data that people didn't know how to deal with. The second piece was there was the Affordable Care Act, all these new regulations and new ways of reimbursing providers. And then finally, there's a tremendous amount of consolidation. So anybody that's tried to deal with the healthcare network understands that health insurance companies and hospitals always want to keep you in network. So they're trying to build a bigger and bigger organization so that anytime you need care, whether it's rehab or a surgery, an outpatient surgery, inpatient, you stay within network. So those major changes were really complicating the market overall. So we set out to help people solve that. We started very, much more basic, thinking about what is the entire universe of healthcare providers. But then we've gotten very complicated, very sophisticated over time. So as we've amassed a huge amount of data on every corner of the healthcare system, we understand how all these organizations are related and how patients flow through the entire healthcare ecosystem. We know the quality of care they provide. We do deep data science to help our clients understand this market. So what the result of that has been that our more sophisticated solutions have really got us into all parts of the healthcare market, from healthcare IT to selling to healthcare providers like hospitals and physician groups, to a big market for us, which is life sciences, and helping those clients think about how do they bring a drug or a device to market in an effective way where they can provide it in a cost-efficient way to the physicians and hospitals and patients that need that care. So it's really evolved in terms of sophistication over time.
And to give a sense of scale of the business, it looks like you guys are hovering around a little less than 1,000 employees today.
Little less than 1,000 employees. We're a public company. We went public in September. As of our last quarterly results, we passed $200 million in annualized revenue. What's interesting from a financial perspective, though, about Definitive Healthcare, especially in today's environment, which is changing rapidly, is we've always built this with three tenets in mind. How can we be fast growing from a revenue standpoint? But how can we also make sure that we have tremendous profitability along the way and a huge amount of visibility into the future? And those three combined makes us a very unique company in today's market.
No question. It's not often that you have kind of the trifecta, triple threat, if you will. And what about now? I mean, it's such an interesting time with so much of the way that traditional healthcare has been done is evolving. Just people are kind of rethinking everything in this new world that we live in. What parts about the industry are you most excited about as it relates to your business?
The vast change is certainly good for our business, and some of the trends that we're seeing are how is healthcare delivered? That is changing very rapidly. So there's been the move from hospital-based care to clinics and surgery centers. You drive down any main road and there's 15 clinics now that you can go to, but that's very convenient for us as consumers, which is great. And then, of course, the move towards more telehealth. Interesting stat for you. When COVID hit in March 2020, telehealth people were talking about it, but it wasn't really taken off like everyone expected it to. It grew 15,000% between March of 2020 and May of 2020. So obviously, people needed care still. Telehealth was an element and a way to get that. So that change in care delivery is just a really important trend for the industry. It drives down costs. It makes it far more convenient for you and I to go get care. So we're pretty excited about that. And then sort of on the other end of the spectrum, you have more and more personalized care. That's really exciting for patients with rare and more severe diseases. So being able to, our clients, we're working with them to help identify patients that would benefit from, that have a specific mutation or would benefit from a specific type of drug. And all of that is exciting for the patients who are dealing with these diseases.
So, Jason, when you were talking earlier and you were saying the three tenets of, the way you built this business, the two that caught my eye, obviously, are the profitability and the visibility into the future. And I'm just curious, like in a time right now where things are, obviously changing really rapidly, we're moving into a different macroeconomic environment. How do you think about investing in, future programs within your business to drive that growth versus, sustaining that profitability so you can capture these changes like, the move to telehealth and whatnot?
Yeah, it's a really good and important question. Luckily, we're performing extremely well in spite of, lots of swirl in the media and what have you about changing macroeconomic environment. We had an amazing Q1. We provided great guidance for the rest of the year. So we are in this, I think, a unique position to continue to invest in all market situations and really increase that competitive moat that we've built up over the last 10 years. Some areas of tremendous excitement to us are we're always investing in new data. So some things we're starting to think about is how does digital influence work within the physician environment? So where are physicians going to be influenced by different companies or different people across all these channels? So that's really exciting for us. We're constantly doing more data science, which is a great investment for us because we get to take data that we've collected over 10 years that doesn't exist anywhere else, and we get to create new insights out of it through just really smart people who are using sophisticated technology. And then, the last thing that we're doing that I think is really interesting is we're creating more vertically oriented solutions. So life sciences companies have very different needs than a telemedicine company. So how do we take this common platform of data and repackage it up to allow our clients to get at exactly the intelligence they need to grow their business as quickly as possible? So we'll keep investing in all of those, in the future. Innovation's absolutely essential to what we do.
Jason, a question I had for you was more kind of on the go-to-market side for your business. When I think of healthcare, I think of highly regulated, probably slower moving, and a lot of the kind of B2B SaaS world that we live in and our audience live in is evolving from that kind of more big enterprise deployments to try before you buy, get started for free, don't talk to a salesperson. How is the healthcare industry evolving from a engagement model? Has that shifted at all in terms of how you guys sell and how companies want to buy the product in the past couple of years?
It hasn't shifted a tremendous amount. People certainly want to do their homework on their own and through a self-service model and all of that. We have the luxury of having a product that we can show people, which is amazing. So people see our product and all of the intelligence we have on every healthcare provider. And if you are part of the growth team at a telemedicine company or a life sciences company, you instantly say, I want that, right? It's kind of what you were talking about before of this must-have information that when you see it, you're kind of like, how do I do my job without that? So that's very important to how we sell is we're able to show people real value. The ROI is extremely clear. They see how they can put this into practice right away. From an implementation standpoint, in a world where I agree with you, people want instant gratification. They want instant results rather than a long, drawn-out implementation process. We can have people turned on within an hour. So if you're excited and you want to get started, you get an email and password. We get you turned on. You can immediately start getting value from the data. We'll, of course, be there to train you and think through with you new ideas on how to use our data most effectively. but it is very quick in a world where people are trying to get results quicker and quicker. We really provide that, and we suffice that need for people.
It's interesting. It's something that a lot of us take for granted, and the ability to actually show the products live and show the power of it. And I can imagine in a lot of these more traditional industries, that isn't necessarily a given. One question that I love to ask founders, especially folks that have, gone from probably a couple people in a room to a public company, is what was the biggest inflection point in your business?
We've been fortunate. The biggest inflection point was getting going to start. My advice to entrepreneurs is like, make that leap, get moving overall. We grew fast from the beginning, and we really focused on profitability and cash flow positive from the beginning. So my first company I started in 2000, which was the single best year to start a company, followed by the 5 worst years ever to try to build a company. So we raised a small seed round of financing and had a client on while I was still in business school, and went off to build that company. And immediately in 2001, there was no Series A. So there was literally no money to be had. If we wanted to build this business, we needed to bootstrap it. So very, very quickly, I realized the importance of capital efficiency and how do you make sure that every dollar counts. Fast forward to Definitive Healthcare, we took that approach from the very beginning. So we were able to continue to reinvest those dollars back into innovating and growing the business. And I think what we realized pretty quickly is nobody had this view of the entire healthcare ecosystem. So there's companies out there that look at claims data, for example, but it's a skewed view of the world. We provide this full view of the healthcare ecosystem that is really essential to all different types of companies. So I think an inflection point for us was when we realized that we were selling initially to technology companies, that we realized there was such a bigger market than that with life sciences and selling to healthcare providers, that we could take this product that we had and scale not from the 10,000 technology companies, but to 100,000 companies that are buyers of our products. And that was like light bulb went out. We started building out products that met their needs, and we started scaling a commercial organization very quickly to go after that. So I think, that aha moment of how big this market actually was really critical to our growth.
That makes a ton of sense, Jason. And when I hear what you're talking about with regards to your business, I kind of almost think about, my exposure to companies that are somewhat similar to you, where you're getting this, market intelligence data, like a Zoom info to get your job done. And I think that one thing that comes to mind is when it comes to this type of a product, there are a ton of use cases and ways that you can use this data. So that's a blessing and a curse in some ways, because it requires a lot of user education and constant, sometimes handholding and what have you. So I guess my question to you is, how do you continually engage clients to make sure that they're leveraging the data on a continuous basis and not just on, certain one-off projects?
Yeah, there's a bunch of interesting points you brought up there. Focus of how we build product is incredibly important, because there are so many different ways you can utilize our product. And then, of course, engaging clients is critical. So the engaging part is easier than you would think, because the data is changing so often. So we spend a lot of time figuring out how do we help our clients understand those changes and adapt to them most quickly. So things like alerts and things like, highlighting information that's changed throughout our product, that drives you back into our product every single day. The other thing that happens is, as a sales rep, for example, is preparing for a meeting. Understanding the access to physicians and hospital executives has gone down really since COVID, where it's harder to get in there and have these meetings. So when you do have these meetings, you can't talk about your product in a vacuum. You have to talk about it in context of the business or the physician that you're meeting with. We help our clients do that. So that pre-call planning, we'll have reps that'll spend an hour or two in our product prepping for a single meeting, so that they can make sure that they find that as valuable as possible. So our product tends to get used very, very often by our clients. The other thing that we do is we integrate with their internal systems. So we want to deliver our data where clients need it. So whether it's pushing data into CRMs like Salesforce or Aviva within life sciences, or Marketo or Pardot or anything like that. Pushing that data out so people can access it every day to do their job is critical. But I think, I guess the final point is you talk sort of about market intelligence. I always think about market intelligence as the first part, which is setting the strategy, understanding the market, defining your approach. What we provide, though, is the strategic data, but also that tactical data that people need to do their job every day. Physician location data, executive information, including contact information, where their affiliations are, whether it's they're affiliated with a hospital or a physician group, who drives that decision making. All of that data is used every single day to do your job.
Jason, I've had a few friends attempt or actually succeed in starting data businesses. And I was actually part of one myself. The first startup I really worked for was a company called Single Platform, where we went out and we aggregated, all the menu data in the world and basically turned it into an API and went back to publishers, then had a SaaS solution where companies could manage it. And it was really, really interesting to me, just the process of, basically organization and productizing that. And I guess my question for you would be, what advice to founders who are interested in starting a data company would you give? Like, what are the critical must-know things for anybody that's interested in that endeavor?
Yeah, I think a few important things are data businesses take a long time to build. Now, the bad news on that is they take a long time to build. The good news on that is they're incredibly hard to recreate if you've built something unique over a period of time. Much of the data that we have in the analytics just doesn't exist anywhere else. You can't rebuild it. And if you do, it just takes, many, many years to catch up. So I guess, with that in mind, you have to have patience. And you have to be willing to understand, where do I want to get to in the next year and where do I want to get to in the next 5 years? The second point on that is, given it takes a long time, it's essential to be very focused and figure out what's the most important data that our clients need today. I can't have everything. I understand that's going to take me a long time to build up, but what can I actually sell today in order to keep the lights on and get to that 5 or 10 year mark where you've started to build something that's completely unique and special and has a huge competitive moat. So those things are key. And then I think the final thing is figure out what's unique. What we've built over the last 10 years is highly proprietary. We've built technologies to ingest data from a few 100,000 different sources, but the data science we've put onto it that fills in blanks and extrapolates information and creates new insights, that's completely proprietary. And then we've supplemented that with, we make about 700,000 phone calls every year to get data directly from providers. All of that is highly unique and has a huge competitive moat. Don't take the approach, I would say, to data founders of creating something that's too easy to do, because somebody else will do it and you won't have that competitive advantage.
I want to shift the conversation to something a bit more personal. And so when you were talking about that company you started in 2000, you talked about the fact that one of your biggest takeaways or learnings from that experience was that you understood the value of being cash flow positive and, just understanding the principles of running a good, sound business. What would you say is your biggest takeaway or a few of your takeaways from your definitive healthcare journey thus far?
That North Star of, making sure that you build a durable business has definitely persisted. So, I think there's, especially in an environment where the world is becoming more capital constrained, like this is just going to provide so much benefit to us. And it has for the last 10 years. It's been a really great competitive weapon. But other things that I've taken away is, and I learned this in my first business too, but it was just much smaller when I sold it, is the importance of the people that you surround yourself with. So scaling a business to the size that we've gotten has just been a really interesting process. So, founder, you brought it up at the beginning, it's one or two people, and a dog in an office. So you're sort of doing everything yourself. And then you get to 100 people, and at 100 people, you're involved in everything as a founder. Like, I knew everything that was going on, decisions went through me. And at that point, you start to hit that critical mass where you can no longer be involved in everything, or you will literally hit a wall and no longer be able to scale. So I started figured out how do you push down more accountability to that next group of people? How do you find people that are willing to take on that ownership and responsibility? And then how do you create metrics to make sure that everyone is going along the same path and driving towards the same end goal? So we did that, as we hit 100 people. So that the scaling part is really hard. And then all of a sudden you think you got to figure it out. You hit 200 people and the same thing happens again. You just need to go down to that next level. So I think, what I've taken away from Definitive is growing and scaling a business. It's very hard. And what you figure out in the first 100 employees doesn't apply to the next 100, which doesn't apply to the next 300. So continuing to reinvent yourself and think about what are the different ways that I need to evolve as a leader as this company grows has been a huge takeaway. And it's a challenge that persists today, as we're going from, we're 200 million in annualized revenue now. We want to be $1 billion company over the next 10 years. That requires a different mentality once again. So continuing to adapt as a leader is absolutely essential.
One of the things I love, Jason, is that, when you say becoming $1 billion company, you talk about revenue, and in VC world, a lot of folks are quote unquote $1 billion companies, but they're, doing a fraction of that in revenue.
That is. I'm always thinking about revenue and profitability. The value will come.
That's awesome. And I guess kind of just rounding it out here, recently you shared with us that you are moving into the executive chairman role of the company. And I know that, myself as a founder and a lot of the people listening, it's a very big decision. It's a very emotional decision to kind of step back a little bit from being as hands-on as you've been, just being the CEO. I'd love to hear just, on the personal side, like what made you choose that decision? When do you think that's a good thing for founders to contemplate? Anything you can share there would be awesome.
Yeah, sure. It is an incredibly emotional decision. I mean, this is my baby. I've put my blood, sweat, and tears into this for a long time now. Not to mention, just I feel a tremendous amount of responsibility to employees, customers, shareholders, et cetera. So it's a hard decision, but it's a great decision, and it's the right time for it. So we're performing extremely well as a company, which is great. So you always want to do stuff like this in a position of strength. We have a very sound strategy that we've laid out for the next coming years of exactly what we need to do to continue to execute. We've got the products in place. We've got the people in place, incredibly strong leadership team. And then we were fortunate enough to find just an unbelievable leader. Our new incoming CEO, his name's Robert Musselwhite, just a tremendous leader with a background in scaling companies at the stage that we're at right now and helping to take that to the next level. So really excited about all the pieces that are in place to ensure that the company continues to be incredibly successful. For me personally, it allows me to spend more time in areas that I'm super passionate about. You've probably, you've heard sort of undertones. Like I really like thinking about strategically, what are the big problems that we're going to solve for this industry, and how do we do it through product? You mentioned product-led growth. Like that has always been at the forefront of what we've done as a company. And we've really disrupted this industry in that way. And when you're managing a 1,000-person company, you spend less time on things like that. You spend more time in the day-to-day, the hundreds of emails you get all the time. So I'm excited personally to take a very active executive chair role and be able to focus more on some of that longer-term strategy, some of the product-led growth, thinking about how do we get to $1 billion in revenue. And how do we sustain long-term profitable growth for the company? So, it's an exciting time. I think it's the right time for the company to transition.
That's awesome, Jason. Well, exciting time for sure. And hopefully you take a little bit of moment to take a breather, and congrats on finding the right person. We'll we're really grateful to have you on the show, Jason. This was an awesome episode. It was exciting to learn about your business and the trajectory that you guys are on. And we're grateful for you spending time with us.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening. We'll see you on the next episode.